So, as everyone gets settled, I gotta do one thing here because I just think this is amazing. Everyone say cheese or do like all sorts of weird signs and barricades. And on the count of three, we say SDR. 1, 2, 3. SDR. Totally cheesy. Sorry about that. But I'm really just extremely excited. All of us of the Sales Development Meetup team that's organized this very first meetup. I just feel really thankful that you're all out here tonight to give your support as well as to really grow this community. Because we all know prospecting is certainly challenging. Being an SDR is a very challenging type of role. And what we really hope for this meetup is that it becomes a place where we can come together, build some connections, learn some tips and tricks and advice, and just grow in our career in sales. And so I just thank you, and let's just do a round of applause for just everyone here tonight. Also, if you're into the whole social media thing, we definitely encourage you to tweet, Instagram, whatever method you want to. We have a hashtag SDR Meet. So that's SDR Meet. Use that and we can track you and then retweet and favorite and do all sorts of lovely social media stuff. I also want to give up just a few minutes, or a minute, giving you 2 minutes, to our wonderful sponsor, Hired.
Thank you. All right, so I'm Steph Scary from Hired, and we are so psyched to be sponsoring this meetup. I think it's really great to get everyone together, so thank you all for coming. Just a quick Hired blurb. Hired is a marketplace for companies and candidates to get connected. So whether you guys in the audience are looking to hire great SDRs and AEs and build out your team, or you yourself are looking for a new job, Hired is a really great place to go. So if you want to learn more, we'd love to have you guys. Again, I'm Steph Scary, so just give me a shout if you need anything. It's hired.com. Thank you.
Awesome. One logistical note as well, I forgot to mention. Restrooms are out through the door that you entered in. The only challenge, though, is that it's locked. So see Becky over there, and she could help unlock it. Becky waving her hand. Thank you. Waving too. So without any further ado, I'd like to definitely get started. And maybe each of you can give a brief 30-second power lightning pitch about who you are and why you're here today.
Great. I'm Meg Hewitt, and I work at NetSuite. Prior to NetSuite, I came to NetSuite in November, and prior to that, I was living and working in Washington, D.C., working for a much smaller software company called weddingwire.com, which was CliffNotes version Yelp.com for weddings. And there I was an inside sales rep for a while, and then I went and was in charge of the onboarding and training program for any new hire that came into the company, so building out all the content, and then following those new sales reps through their ramping period and doing all of the coaching and training, in addition to their direct managers. So at NetSuite, I manage the business development team, and I have 11 wonderful BDRs, SDRs, we call them BDRs, and so many of them are here. So I'm really pumped to have them here, and I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys and tell some of the secret sauce of NetSuite and how my BDRs are successful.
I heard it was mandatory for us for BDRs to be here, but so my name is Kyle Barretto. Been in tech for a good 5-6 years now. Built out 2 SDR teams, one at single platform, and where he's currently working. I was like the 17th employee there. We ended up going to 130-ish, and then got acquired for a bunch of money. And then went to NewsCred after that. So ended up leading a team of 10, or what is now 10. And now I run my own company. It's called Prospecting Zen, and we is provide data, the necessary data for SDRs and the sales development function.
Happy to be here. Alex Siegel. I work at Single Platform, not as an individual contributor, just a straight salesperson on the floor. I've been there for about 1.5 years. I grew up in Miami and spent the last 6 years in Israel. I worked for a startup called Glide, there for a little bit just doing marketing. I realized that I love doing sales more than whatever's involved in marketing. So when I came to New York, really that's what I was looking for, and just been loving that, and happy to be here.
Nice. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. I'm fairly loud, so if anyone wants a microphone, for now maybe I'll turn it off. Yeah. All right. Easier to end that than passing around a mic. But the whole point of what we want to get through today is just some of the tips and tricks that made each one of you successful in your sales career, as well as how you did prospecting. And so we're going to be spending next 25 minutes going through that. Afterwards, we'll just have informal Q&A. Everyone's going to be around here for the next 30 hour past the panel. But I do want to get into some real meat of the matter. And I'd be curious as to everyone's experience in sales is different, and the way everyone gets into it is different. But there's a point in time when you really struggle when you're first starting out, not knowing what you're doing. When did it click for you that, okay, I can do sales and I have a way or a means of doing it? Okay, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So I was raised by parents who ran a small business out of my parents' house. So I was exposed to 200 people coming to my house 3 times a year and was naturally just told to talk to people. So that was probably the very first initial introduction to sales in my life. And then I wasn't exactly sure that I wanted to be in sales. I thought I wanted to go in event planning, and ended up finding Wedding Wire through thinking that I wanted to do event planning. Realized that it was an inside sales job, and when I started to think about the traits that I possessed, I realized that sales was a really good fit for me. So in terms of when it really clicked, it's always a struggle at the very beginning. When in my inside sales career, we had a quota, we were closing deals, doing the full sales cycle, which is different than the sales development reps that I support now. And it really clicked when I started to think about, I like to use the term with them, which some of you may be familiar with. It's what's in it for me, right? But it's not me, it's what's in it for the client, what's in it for you as the client. So starting to really think, learning some sales methodologies and learning about the importance of client voice, and starting to think about, well, what do they really care about? Why do they even care to talk to me? And you go in this natural fight mode where you just start pitching straight at people initially, and that's the most common thing that I think sales development or inside sales, entry-level salespeople do. And it's really just starting to realize what do they actually care about, and what's the value that you can provide, and just letting them talk and listening, and then building the conversation from there, rather than telling all about what you are selling and why they should care. It's more figuring out why they might care through that conversation.
A good point on methodology. Alex, want to share?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to what I was saying, I think that when it clicked for me a little bit more practically was that, I think when you start out in sales, you kind of have the perception in your own mind, and therefore it's related to the call that you're on or the person that you're meeting, is just being nice and accommodating. 3 o'clock didn't work, we're going to reschedule the time. And you end up being over accommodating, and people end up walking over you, and you set up the pattern where in the relationship where you end up having to ask them for a credit card, or if they want to do this, they end up saying, they end up walking over you at that point, which is the most critical point to be, the salesperson, and making sure that you can turn that no into a yes. And I was getting no's and no's and no's, and I said, I'm tired of saying no's. I'm not going to take no's anymore. And I realized that my title at the company is a sales consultant. I'm there to consult them how to, get their business to be where they need to be. Their job, I do mostly with restaurants. Their job is to, wrap a tortilla and, do whatever they got to do, or, create being a culinary artist, my artistry is making sure that creating the best potential for them to get customers from an online, from the online into their restaurant. And I'm the consultant, and I'm the expert. So it's perceiving myself as the expert, and now it's when it finally clicked for me. The combo of not taking no, and the realization that really I'm the expert to share with them the platform and what benefit that we have for them. Those two components kind of came together, and then I really just the sales started dropping, and just really I was just battling every single person and just showing confidence and a sense in the call that it's someone to look up to and someone who you want to take advice from and want to be consulted from. So that was really when things started clicking for me personally.
I think for me, I was in the SMB space for a little bit. I was at Yax at the beginning of my career, and they're doing really well now. They're like poised to go public and all that stuff. But I think it was when I was able to do like 120 dials without really being phased. Like people would be like, "How do you possibly do your job?" I'm like, "Well, it's sales. It's what I was supposed to do, I guess." And I would get no's all the time. Just pick up the phone again and keep trucking along. So like that's when I knew I was like, this is probably a career I should pursue and actively achieve.
And a lot of what you said, talking about $120, we all talked about this idea of a methodology. Our managers, pound methodology, the head of sales pound methodologies. There's also your own internal way of doing things. Is there anything about your own internal methodology that you want to share with us? Start with Val.
I mean, the way it's structured just in terms of us, our cold calling or whatever it is we're getting a list of leads, and we go through them nationally. So that's the way it started initially. But I think what I've developed is really understanding, being there for a year and a half, so I've gained understanding of certain territories and understanding what certain territories need, and whether it's tourist season, whether it's I don't know, whatever the dynamic is, and just what I've done recently is just clicked a business that I've sold in the past and opened up a Google Maps map, and then pulling up the restaurants that are there, and then calling them and saying that I did this for this business, and these are the metrics that we have, and wanted to talk to you about it. So it's really using that, using like a reference, and that creating like a more of a warmer approach for what I think I'm supposed to be doing cold calling here in a certain sense, right? So it's creating like a warmer approach. That's the way it's developed, and for me personally.
Yeah, that speaks to kind of the client voice that I was mentioning before. I mean, I think what is really, really successful to my team and having worked as an inside sales rep is leveraging the people that you're already speaking to, or leveraging people within a company when you're reaching out to that second, third, fourth contact. Sometimes referencing by name, sometimes referencing, hey, I'm working with some colleagues at your company, or I'm speaking with other colleagues at your company. So using that, and then also trying to find those similar stories of where those case studies of customers that have seen success, and trying to, we verticalize a lot by industry at NetSuite, so it's really good to try to get those customer stories verticalized as well. So you're not just throwing out a random reference that doesn't actually stick. So that's a little bit just to further that point.
Yeah, so at the enterprise level, we ended up verticalizing as well, because you do get that client voice, and you're able to reference all those use cases that are relevant for their client, because everyone's interested in what their competitors are doing, right? It's just everyone wants to know, especially in the marketing side. But what I would say is like one of the most important qualities you can have as an SDR is empathy, right? Like being able to put yourself in their shoes and understand that like it's not about you. It's simply not, right? Like your prospects, they care about what they're doing and how they can get promoted, right? The key to a good salesperson and a good SDR, they sell promotions. They sell, I'm going to get you to the next level because this software will help you get there, or whatever you're selling, right? So it's empathy. That's the most important quality. Any conversation you have.
Interesting, you mentioned empathy, right? Yeah. But we're doing a lot of like cold stuff. These people don't know us. How are you able to develop that empathy over a phone or an email, which is even more impersonal?
It's tough, right? Like picking up the phone and doing 120 dials, it's not easy. I think it's showing your expertise, right? Like showing that you can be a resource to your prospects, And then once they trust you enough, then you can start selling them your solution, right? It's like you probably know their I hate the word pain points, but like their obstacles more than they do because you've dealt with it through several organizations, and you can reference, all right, so this is how your competitor dealt with this. Like, are you gonna fall to the same?
So you leverage a lot of just like existing knowledge, institutional knowledge of the customers.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be an expert in your field, right? Like, that's the key to any prospecting method.
Yeah.
Any medium, really.
So in terms of that, when you think about trust, it's a huge barrier still. I mean, what were some of the things that you've been able to do when you've been getting pushback in that conversation with the client? Any tips on trying to establish a little bit of that trust? More than just being able to reference stories.
Yeah, it's also trying to find something that has recently personally resonated with them. So that can be done in a lot of different ways. Sometimes, I'm sure everyone's heard this before, but you can find out a lot of information and really interesting information about people on LinkedIn. It could be simply something that they're a volunteer organization they're really interested in. The Giants won the national championship, and you're calling someone in the Bay Area, or whatever the case.
So that's wrong. Those are the wrong Giants, by the way. New York.
Sorry, New York. Well, sorry. Anyway, our company's out of So, but you understand what I'm saying in terms of finding something that resonates to them that is outside of their day-to-day responsibilities in their role, and that's hard to do. And that takes a lot of time. And I think kind of going back to things that I found have made me successful and then also my SDRs is you can get really caught up in that stuff too though, right? Like how are you going to consistently make 120 calls, 60 calls, whatever your number is, by still making everything really personalized? That it's really contradictory in a way because it's hard to do that. So it's how do you keep your research to 3 to 4 minutes, but then just adding a little bit of a personalization to a concise, relevant message that speaks to them.
You definitely get to research paralysis and start digging in way too deep.
And that's something that I think, in terms of people that that have been really successful and that have worked for me, and also that I've just seen also in our direct sales organization is. You just can't spend too much time researching. Just pick up the phone.
Right.
They're going to tell you way more that you can find out from doing all this research and staring at a computer screen for days. It's like, well, have you just called just to see if it would be able to tell you anything? So that's a really easy thing that I think a lot of SDRs, again, it's that just confidence to pick up the phone and see if you can get anything on the phone before you spend an hour trying to make this perfect message that's fully personalized.
There seems to be that fear of like the phone, it just stares back at you. And you know you need to pick it up for your job, but it just keeps staring at you. So, to that point, have there any like habits that you formed or developed to kind of help psych you up? Because obviously that's going to be a big difference between SDRs that are ultimately successful and those that aren't. What are some of those habits that you have?
I actually picked this up at single platform, but I do push-ups like every hour. That's really helped us.
Well, we're not doing any push-ups here.
No, I think it's really important that, your state fluctuates throughout the entire day, and you certainly hit your low points, and when you notice that you hit those low points, you have to cultivate energy, right? That's how I did it, at least, and I found it very helpful, and it did cycle myself up, and then my team as well. I do it in front of my team, and they're like, all right, this guy's invested in this thing, and that's really important. So it just keeps morale up, keeps things fun too. That's the way that I've kind of conquered that. Made a lot of that.
Yeah.
But when you talk about trust, my God, like trying to get a credit card from a restaurant owner, it's nuts. But that's another way. But yeah, how do you?
No, I think they do that like on a larger scale. Like I think it's important for any managers in the room. It's important to just take realize that, you know, when you're on the phone and you're just calling, if you notice like the first calls in the morning are the best calls that you make because you're fresh, you're not, you don't have that like robotic tone in your voice after like when it's 4, you're saying the same thing basically, you're reading from a script especially, like, you know, you're just saying the same thing. So it's important, you know, if you're pumping out 100 calls, I don't know what everyone's doing here, if you're pumping out 100 calls by definition, you're going to sound robotic. So it's important to like be cognizant of the fact that you're doing that and just find a way to get away from that, whether it's getting off the phone and doing that. For managers, and what I was saying is that what we do is instead of these push-ups, some people do push-ups still, but it's just getting off the phone and just having a team meeting and just like we do quote time, our team does quote time, everyone takes a great quote and we just share quotes and inspiration and you get inspired by that and we pump up and we say, yeah, let's go, 1, 2, 3, these things, we said the team, and then you go back and get on the phone and you're pumped up again for like another 2 hours and you just gotta find that critical point of the day. If you're not a manager, just do that on your own and just find that way within yourself. Like it's about keeping that excitement because the caller's gonna pick that up in your voice. You gotta sound vibrant, excited, magnetic on the phone because all they have is your voice.
I think just to speak to that, it's like having those strong blocks, right? I find that when you have a bit of a routine of things, you know, you come in and you have the same routine, and you do the same thing day in and day out, and you have that routine and consistency in your day to day. I think it takes, 3 to 7 minutes to get back to what you're doing after you've gotten up and completely gotten sidetracked on something else. And it's really easy to get distracted when you're sitting on a sales floor with a bunch of people that you work with. So it's, how do you find those ways to stay really engaged and give yourself kind of time frames of, okay, I'm gonna set an hour and I'm going to make 20 dials, or I'm gonna make however many dials you can in that given hour. And then get up and do something that you enjoy. Get away from it.
That's an interesting point.
But I think switching tasks constantly is what gets in the way of actually having that productivity.
Does anyone do kind of like your own like mini goal setting? Is that something that's part of like your habits?
I do that every day. Okay, so I'm gonna sit at my desk and get this done. I cannot get up until I've done that.
Yeah, and I think, and you described, we had power hours. So, you know, an hour like where you make as many calls as you possibly can to your top prospects. Right? It's that focus and that lack of multitasking that really like gets your team to put in the time and do the grunt work. You know, a long time.
No, everyone's doing it. I'd like to kind of maybe step up a little bit and think of, are there any sort of top-end principles that you think about, live by in terms of how you sell? Anything come to mind?
I mean, for me personally, I'll try and relate this to everybody. I mean, there's different organizations, but what I engage is the principle that I engage is called being the buyer, being the banker. What that means is that I'm creating a perception on the phone. They don't know who I am. I could be a guy who just popped off the skateboard in tank top and shorts, or I could be a guy with suspenders, slick back hair, corner office overlooking the Statue of Liberty. They have no idea who I am, but the only way you're going to garner and gain respect from the people that you're speaking to, especially if you're on the phone, which is basically all I know at the moment, because that's what I've been doing for a year and a half, is sounding like the banker. What does the banker sound like? He's authoritative, he's confident, he's assertive. You have to relate for that in your own agenda and your own business, but it's about having that confidence, and that's the principle that I engage when I'm on the phone. Is I create that perception and I almost become that character. I'm reading from a script, so by definition I'm an actor in a certain sense when I'm reading from a script on a sales call. But I'm being the banker, I'm creating that persona. Is that really me day to day? No, I probably wouldn't have any friends if I lived like that. But I live like that on the phone because that's what garners the respect, that's what allows them to bend their knee to me, and I need that. I need to have that control on the phone, because when I get them to the credit card and they tell me they don't have the card on them, and I know that they're lying for a fact, so then, I gotta maintain control and tell them, wipe your hands, put your hand in your pocket, grab that credit card, we're doing this today. That type of persona, that's just for my business and for single platform, that's what's necessary. That's the principle that I really live by.
That's really great, because as an aside, I learned this years ago, you're always going to be in a weaker position if you go in a seller-buyer paradigm. That relationship automatically puts you in a position of not being trusted, puts you in a position of having to be supplicant. And it's always going to be an uphill battle. But if you can change that paradigm, there's some students in sales that do things like teacher-student, and you mix it up depending on how the conversation goes. In your case, it's I'm going to be the banker. That's definitely something that's a very credible type of way of approaching your prospects.
And even at an even more basic level, it's your vocal presence, right? It's simply like, what is your intonation? Have you ever recorded yourself? Have you ever talked to someone on the phone in front of a mirror and looked at yourself and actually smiled while you're on the phone? If you're smiling when you're speaking, you naturally sound happier, right? It's one of those things. Like, my VDRs probably hate me, but sometimes I'm like, I'll like put on a really cheesy face because they'll get on the phone and just sound completely monotone. And it's because it is that 10th call, that 11th call, or whatever it is. So it's the intonation. It's also the pace. It's matching that personality to who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to someone who talks a mile a minute, and then you go and try to speak with them at a really slow pace, they've lost you in a minute. But then if you speak a mile a minute at someone who doesn't have that same pace, they also will completely lose you. So
I think for me, from my cold calling days, I think it was more about just trying not to sound like it's a cold call, right? It sounds really simple, but it's actually very key, right? Like, there are so many times where you ask someone like, hey, like, how are you? And then you just go right into your shit. Right? They don't care about that, right? They want to have a conversation with you. You start off like a conversation. When you talk to a friend, there's usually 2 how are yous. It's like, yeah, how are you doing? And then like you ask them again, how are you? Like, notice it in your conversation. It happens every single time. Do the same thing on the phone. Right? That's what matters. It's trying to blur the lines between professional and casual, right? Because that's when they most listen. It's as simple as that.
So, obviously this panel is about what makes a successful SDR manager. What do you think are some of those traits that you've observed that really differentiate the successful SDR versus one that may not necessarily pan out?
You can see, yeah.
I think one thing is hard and hard work. There's a famous thing that we always say in the company, in single platform. There's 2 people in the company out of, I think they've been around for 3, 4, 5 years, that have not panned out, and they've been hard workers. Anybody who's a hard worker is going to get the job done and is going to be able to achieve. A few years ago, a manager told me that he got rid of a guy had quit on him, and he was like, you know what, I'm happy because the guy didn't have heart. And the reality is that in this type of job, if you don't have heart and you're not there, you're just not going to get it. You're not, if you don't have heart, you're better off as an accountant or, sitting behind a desk crunching numbers, whatever the case might be. For this type of job and the job that all of us are doing in this room, you have to be someone who has heart. If not, you're just not going to do it. You're going to get no's, you're going to get clobbered, you're going to get cursed on. All these different things that are happening to you on the phone, you have to have heart and want it deeply. And if you don't, they're just not going to pan out. And I think I see those people that leave the company, they lose that. They just, their whole body, it's like this, like they look like Gumby. Like Gumby. They're like Gumby. They're just on the phone, they walk around like Gumby instead of like having this posture on the phone and they're ready to like lock down the sale, cold call for 100 calls straight, So.
Heart's definitely very important. And having a heart for the client as well.
Yeah,
no, and it's amazing how many people I've experienced in sales that don't seem to actually like people.
Or sales. There's people in sales don't like sales.
Yes, no,
they don't like sales.
Yeah.
I think something that is not a common trait that people usually talk about, but it's your ability to be open to change, and it's the adaptability. That's the word I'm looking for. So it's being able to be really adaptive. I think if you're an SDR in the room, or you're at a fast-growing company, whatever role you're in, there are a million things changing at a mile a minute, and you get one answer and then the next day, that's not what your manager's boss has told them that is the way you're supposed to do things. Or there's just constantly, especially in these fast-growing companies, there's so much change happening at such a rapid pace that you just have to be adaptable and you have to be able to change and just brush it off and move forward. And that also goes to being able to switch just simply on a task-by-task basis. Being able to do that pretty seamlessly makes such a huge difference. You're just so much more productive.
I think, from my experience, what separates a good SDR from a great SDR is their ability to pick their head up and understand the bigger picture, right? Are you a team player? Are you like working to improve the people around you? Because that's more important than actually being an individual contributor that's really good at their job, right? It's more about, do you understand the processes and how to make them more efficient, right? So that's really that's what led to myself getting into the leadership role. I can point to several other people, even in this room, that have stepped into leadership roles simply because they understand that this is a revenue org. I am not just setting appointments here. There's a big difference. And those are the most successful SDRs I've seen.
Would you say that was a good part of why you became a manager when you were over at Newsgrade?
It was 100% the reason.
And what about that kind of that promotion jump, right? You can be an individual contributor, but then to become a manager. What do you think you really need to start thinking about?
First, you got to start garnering the respect of your other SDRs, right? Like, it's actually kind of rare within an organization that someone makes the leap from individual contributor to manager. Usually that leap is made at another company because it's hard to garner the respect of your fellow SDRs, right? They're like, oh, and granted, they're also really young and they don't understand that, all right, this guy's a top performer, his natural progression is into management, right? So they're a little green in that sense, but it's.
Like you've been managing quite some time now.
Well, I haven't been a direct manager for that long, but I went from an inside sales role into this. I didn't have anyone directly, I wasn't managing anyone directly, but I was the coach. I was the fun man. I didn't have to be the one to get them in trouble, right, or to come down on people. I was the one that they would talk to about their manager because I was coaching them on their sales skills. So I learned what they liked about their managers, what they didn't like about their managers. So that helped me prepare myself to be a manager because I feel like I learned a lot about what people didn't really like out of their managers. And I think something that I really take to heart, and I tell my SDRs all the time, it's like, please communicate with me. Communicate with me about everything. Like, if you don't communicate with me, the more, I'd rather you over-communicate and let's scale it back if we need to, rather than me not really understanding exactly what is going on in your world. So that's something that I think also my manager has done for me. And that has made a big difference in my just short progression as a manager as well.
And you had kind of a unique story though, because you were in sales coaching, and such a large part of success as a manager is the ability to be able to coach and make your team better. Have you kind of felt that in the folks that you've worked with in the past? Like differentiation between good managers versus managers that are just kind of there?
Yeah, I think anyone can attest to this, but the best managers are the ones that put you before the company, right? They care more about how successful you are as opposed to like what numbers you've been hitting, right? They care about your entire career and not the job that you have. They want to see you successful, whether that's at that current company or at subsequent companies. So I think we can all say that those are the managers you like the best because they're on your side no matter what.
So I want to leave with one question because we're coming up on our 30 minutes. Leave us with one real interesting tip or tidbit that you'd like to just share with everyone that you think, yeah, this is the bit of gold that really helped me out and helped me like kill my numbers.
When I was a direct contributor, I worked harder than everyone else in the organization. I made every single day, I would look at my metrics, and I had more calls and more talk time and more emails than anyone else on my team. And I doubled productivity. It's not really magic. It's just, you put your head down.
But it's focused on metrics, right? And
I did.
Measure.
Okay, so I say that, but then I also, that was at a more, inside sales, I was closing deals on my own, right? But I think in an environment where you're simply doing the prospecting, it's how do you find that balance of hitting those high metrics, but then also not just going through the motions of making calls to people that don't actually matter, just to hit those numbers. So it's how do you just kind of score the companies that you're reaching out to, the contacts that you're reaching out to, and pair that with your activity. So it's actually stack ranking a little bit the types of leads that you're getting, the quality of those leads, and then with those metrics.
For me, I was on the enterprise side, and I was the first SDR at NewsGuard when I was stepping into later a leadership role. But what I focused on was just like being as efficient as possible. So I noticed that I did lead research, and I said to myself, this is bullshit, like I'm not doing this anymore. So I just trained a team to do it for me, and then focused purely on prospecting. And then I presented the entire company what I was doing. They're like, okay, you're going to be a manager, and that's when. So it's just finding those inefficiencies, and then understanding, okay, if I can offload this, then I can make my team 25% more productive, and then I was outperforming anyone else, everyone else anyway. So.
I think in addition to all the things that have been said over the last 30 minutes, I think that, I think about how many thousands of people are in sales in New York, in our immediate area of Manhattan, and there's maybe just looking around 50, 60, 70 people in the room right now who've decided to come and be a part of a program like this where you're continuing to refine and develop this craft, right? Your craftsmanship. And I think every craftsman knows that no matter where, the top craftsman knows that no matter where you are, as high as you are, you always continue refining that craft and never saying, I've made it and that's it, I made it. As great as your metrics were, I don't think you probably never were saying, that's it, I can now cruise. You just went back the next day and said, I want to beat that, I want to beat that, right? So
being insatiable.
Yeah, and so really it's continuing to do what everyone in this room is doing now, which is continuing to refine the craft and continuing to be open-minded and develop. And I raise my hand. I'm sitting in the chair here, but I'm also here as well, and just listening to you guys as well, and just refining the craft and all that. So as long as we all, including myself, are dedicated to that, so then I think that's the greatest piece of advice or that.
No, I appreciate it. Al, and I think that's what we want to do with this meetup is, start diving into the craft. And, for our first meetup, we're trying to be experimental as well. And part of this is figuring out what are going to be the topics that are of interest to all of us in the room as we grow as a community. So obviously your feedback is really important. What is it about the craft of prospecting that we all want to hear about to help us be better, to be more efficient, to help us work harder and smarter? So I just want to give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists. I also want to give a shout out to Hired again, who was so gracious for helping to sponsor this first meetup, so thank you. So we have our next meetup, Wednesday, August 5th. It will be here again in SmartLink. There's a meetup template, it's already set up. You can sign up there if you so wish. And we definitely encourage you to leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. How is this meetup? And also let other people know about this community that we're growing. Because we definitely want this to be a place where it can be a resource for anyone that can come to and really learn about this craft. So thank you again for coming. We're going to be around here to answer any questions that you have, just from anything that we talked about or anything else from this evening. And please feel free to continue to have some drinks and snacks. And thank you so much.